It's the Sports Take Lunch Break, brought to you by Office Essentials, your hometown supplier of all the office products and furniture you need to grow your business. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. I am your host, Andrew Corns, and we are back with another episode. Joining me on the mic this week is again the one and only Dan Sashanik. Dan, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. How about you?
I'm doing well. All right, well, without delaying too much, let's just jump right into it. On deck today, we're going to knock out some listener mailbag questions again, and we'll update you on our greatest sports video game of all time tournament. But first, Dan, let's get into some headlines. You want to kick things off for us?
Yeah. Last night, The Last Dance aired on ESPN Plus. I did not get to see it. It's a 10-part series about Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls. Did you watch any of it?
Did I watch any of it? Oh, yes,
I know you did.
I feel like you're the only person in America that didn't watch it, potentially. It's funny, as I was coming in here today through our warehouse, I passed a couple of guys 6 feet apart, of course, and it literally was all anyone was talking about in the back. You know,
really?
As I was walking in, I could hear Jordan's name in the distance. It's just been on the front of everyone's mind. Of course, I watched it. It's interesting. When there's this much hype around something, you wonder, can it live up to it? Is it going to be good? It blew away the hype. It was amazing. Maybe it's because there's this void in sports where we don't get to watch anything right now, and I'm just so craving something. And then, this Jordan thing falls into our lap. And there are a few points worth noting so they aired 2 episodes last night, each of them an hour length.
An hour length.
They're an hour length. Yeah, okay. There's 10 episodes in total. So for the next 5 weeks, they're going to do 2 episodes a week, and it's cool because ESPN on the main channel is airing the uncensored version, and then on ESPN2 simultaneously they're airing the edited version.
Oh.
And that's very important because a lot of the reviews that came out said this is a very vulgar documentary. So if you're listening and you have kids, I would recommend going to the ESPN2 edited version. But cursing and things like that, that's just part of sports. You hear that all the time, so
it's just natural.
Yeah, and so what this documentary is The Last Dance is the 97-98 Bulls season. So it was the year they won their 6th championship. And they gave the NBA unprecedented access behind the scenes that year.
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of the cursing and stuff you hear is like locker room stuff that,
just regular locker room talk.
Yeah, just things you hear in the locker room and guys just, talking with each other. And so, they're not being filtered or anything like that. And this footage has been sitting in a vault essentially for the last 20 years. And
why?
So Adam Silver, who's the current commissioner of the NBA, was the head at the time of like the NBA's video production department.
Okay.
And he actually came up with the idea. He said, everyone kind of knew Jordan and this Bulls team, this was the end. And he was like, we haven't really documented this great thing that's, an all-time team, so we need to really work hard on it. So Adam Silver and Michael Jordan both had to fully commit to like releasing the footage when they did. So for a lot of years, I don't think Jordan wanted the footage released necessarily. And then in 2016, the story goes that when LeBron and the Cavs won the championship at the parade, Jordan somehow made the decision in that moment. Let's go ahead and put this together. So the last 4 years they've been putting, they've been editing it together and getting interviews from guys and things like that. It was remarkable. If you're not a basketball fan or you're a newer basketball fan, you're too young to know Michael Jordan, you've got to watch it because you'll fall in love with basketball and you'll realize why Michael Jordan won our greatest athlete of all time tournament and why everyone reveres Mike for being the best. A few points though that I thought really just were unbelievable in the 2 episodes. You got a real sense that Scottie Pippen has gone unbelievably underrated over the years.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you hear of like duos where it's like Shaq and Kobe, Magic and Kareem. You hear these guys and they're sort of considered like on equal footing, and obviously nobody's on Jordan's footing, but you rarely do you hear people say like Jordan and Pippen to the degree of other duos. Like Pippen almost kind of has become like a lost, forgotten man to a large degree.
Yeah, but it's been shown that without one or the other, then they're not winning the championship.
Yeah, Jordan even said it. He's like, I didn't win before him and I didn't win after him, and that's all you need to know, And Scottie, one interesting aspect of the documentary was that you realize how underpaid Scottie Pippen was in the NBA. So in the 97-98 season, he was in a position where it was the last year of his contract. In 91, he signed a 7-year, $18 million deal. And Scotty came from a very humble background. I think he said he had his family there was 12 siblings, he and his siblings. So they came from poverty. So to him, $18 million was a ton of money.
Yeah.
But in 97, 98, he was the 122nd highest paid player in the NBA and arguably the second best player in the NBA.
Yeah.
So there was that dynamic of Scotty just feeling really undervalued his whole career. So there's tons of drama behind the scenes that I think is going to kind of get churned up through this documentary. So it was cool to see Scotty get recognized.
Yeah.
Another one, I forgot how much I hated Jerry Krause. I haven't thought of the name Jerry Krause in a while. And if you're not familiar with Jerry Krause, he was the GM of the Chicago Bulls through that 90s run.
That's why I know the name. Okay.
Yeah, so he and Jordan did not get along. And there was I certainly knew towards the end that they didn't get along. And, Jerry Krause used to get booed all the time, when he got introduced at Bulls games. They even pointed that in the documentary. I didn't realize the bad blood had stemmed so far back. And so the documentary, I'm not going to spoil anything, but the documentary shows you sort of the root of why Jerry Krause and Michael Jordan didn't get along in the early 90s that just kind of festered and continued on. And Jerry Krause also got a ton of heat from this documentary on the way he treated Phil Jackson, who, as we now know, Phil Jackson won 11 NBA championships as a head coach. He's regarded as probably the best NBA coach of all time. There was a quote in the documentary that Jerry Krause told Phil Jackson before the start of that season, "This is your last year. It doesn't matter if you go 82-0 and win the championship. You're done."
Wow.
Like, what GM would say that to a coach that has just won 5 championships in 7 years?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So that was a fascinating thing. 2 other points. I had no idea that when Jordan joined the Bulls that they were as bad as they were. They were only drawing like 33% of the building in attendance. And there was a joke going around, and this was probably the funniest moment in the whole documentary. The nickname that the Bulls had when Jordan showed up as a rookie was the Traveling Cocaine Circus. So drugs were very prevalent in the mid-'80s, especially in the NBA circle. And Jordan tells this unbelievably poignant story about walking into a hotel room with a bunch of his teammates at the time and what he saw, and I'll just leave it at that. And if I'm not going to spoil anything, you should definitely watch the documentary. But it was fascinating that a 21-year-old Michael Jordan, who's a rookie, had the maturity and intelligence to not join his teammates in doing all this nefarious stuff, and actually was, again, the documentary will show you everything, but it was really cool to see from an early age Jordan had his family, Dean Smith, his coach at North Carolina, they instilled a certain work ethic in him, and he had a maturity beyond his years, and so it was really interesting to see that. And then the final point was probably the culmination of the 2 episodes last night was Jordan absolutely torching the Boston Celtics in 1986. So 1986, Boston Celtics, best team in the NBA, and I think they went on to win the championship that year. I can't remember if they won or if they lost to the Lakers that year. But the Bulls got the 8th seed in the playoffs. First off, their record was 30-52. So they were 22 games under 500, and they made the playoffs, which is just crazy to think about in the first place. But Jordan had a bunch of injuries that year. He didn't play. They had him on minutes restrictions. There was all sorts of drama going on. But they ended up making the playoffs. And at that time, it was a best of 5, I believe. They only played 3 games in that first round against the Celtics. But that was sort of the moment that you knew Jordan was going to just dominate the league. And what was really cool about it was they had Larry Bird and they had Danny Ainge, 2 of those 86 Celtics, talk. They were talking as the highlights were being shown of what Jordan did in that series. And let's see if I can find the quote. Larry Bird had a quote that was unbelievable. So the series, 3 games, Jordan averaged 43.7 points per game, 6.3 rebounds, 5.7 assists, and in the second game he had 63 points, which still to this day stands as the all-time single-game playoff record for points in a game. And obviously the Celtics won. The Bulls were not any good. They had Jordan, and that was it. And Larry Bird said, "I've never seen it before, and I've never seen it after. That was not Michael Jordan out there. That was God disguised as Michael Jordan." That quote is so unbelievable because Larry Bird is a top...
Coming from Bird.
It's coming from Bird. He's a top 10 player. He was at the peak of his ability in 1986. Yeah. And the way the video highlights show, the Celtics were terrified of Michael Jordan. And you could see they were like they were all trying to like pass defensive duties to somebody else. He was just absolutely torching them. And Bird even said another point. They won game 1 by 2 points. They had the last shot. And he said, thank God we had the last shot or we probably wouldn't have won. I mean, they knew if Jordan had the final shot, the game was over and Jordan was going to win. So I could probably go on for 2 hours about the Jordan documentary yesterday. We'll talk about it again next week because, again, we've got 5 weeks of it, but you got to watch it. So
yeah, I'll start catching up.
I would jump into the documentary if you're even a casual sports fan because it's unbelievable to see greatness at this level and this much behind-the-scenes footage that's never been shown before. So really cool. All right, Dan. Last week, NASCAR driver Kyle Larson made the news, and not in the most positive of ways.
Mm-hmm.
So he used a racial slur live on air during an iRacing event. He's been subsequently suspended and fired by his team. I know you're a NASCAR guy.
Yeah.
How big of a deal is this for the sport? And do you anticipate us ever seeing Kyle Larson race again in NASCAR?
It's a big black eye for the sport. I mean, those words are not tolerated, should not be tolerated anywhere. You know, I mean, there's really nothing else to say about that. You know, he's going to get suspended. I think he will be back. Everybody forgets and forgives, which is, you know.
He's a young kid, too.
Yeah.
Didn't he just win Rookie of the Year?
I thought so. You know, at least close to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would have to say that he will be back and there will be repercussions. But, you know, like I said before, you got to take that out of your vocabulary. I mean, I don't know who still has it. You know, really, not many people should have that in their vocabulary at all. You know, and for it to come out, you know, I have given him the benefit of the doubt and have not listened to it.
I was actually watching the race live.
You were?
I was. I didn't catch that moment, but I was actually watching that race because there was nothing on TV, and I happened to miss that moment. But
well, I'm wondering if they're still on an 8-second delay and they still caught it.
I don't know. That's a good question. I haven't actually heard the audio myself, which is probably a good thing because I don't really want to hear it. But did you hear what his excuse was, or he said he thought he was on like a private chat with another driver?
Doesn't matter.
Exactly. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Exactly.
I'm not saying that to anybody. I'm not saying that to my brother. You know, if we're whispering to each other in a locked off, closed off room.
Well, and of all the sports, you know, NASCAR already has sort of a reputation of being, you know, they're primarily popular in the South. It's almost exclusively white Caucasian drivers.
I'm trying to think of the driver who got, you know, who took all the brunt of it back in the 50s and 60s. Yeah,
it's not a good look for NASCAR, who already has sort of an image of, you know.
No, but luckily their fan base will, you know, kind of maneuver around it and forgive and forget. To no extent am I excusing it or saying that nobody should ever use this term. I'm sorry. Nobody. So, you know, especially, you know, white people, you know, white privileged. And I mean, this guy makes a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
you just hope that even though he got fired by his team and suspended by NASCAR, you hope that there are enough things in place to where he can get some sort of guidance as to, you'd hate to see him ostracized for life. Like, I think we live in a world where you want to give people a second chance. And I would kind of hope that NASCAR would give him an opportunity to let us forgive him and prove that he's a changed person, you know?
Exactly.
As for such a young guy, I think he's in his young 20s, it would be pretty tough to just say, that's it, you're done.
Yeah. You can't do that because, I mean, that's really harsh on a kid. But again, it's something that shouldn't be said, and for it to come out of his mouth, no matter what, is never acceptable.
Yep. No, I'm with you on that. Dan, all right, what's the next headline you got for me?
Well, I am reading here about this Emily Bates, the 16-year-old kid out of where's he out of? I just saw it too. But he won the National Player of the Year, High School Player of the Year as a sophomore. That's something that LeBron James hadn't done. So, I mean, have you heard of this guy, and what do you think about this?
Yeah, so I don't want to butcher his first name. I don't know if I've ever really heard it. I've seen it written a lot. Amani Bates, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm
pretty sure they're going to call him Money.
He's really good. obviously I've only seen so much of him because high school basketball isn't just something that's easy to find. He's 6'9" at 16, okay? 16-year-old kid, 6'9". If you look at highlights of him, he's definitely scrawny and thin. He kind of looks like he's built like Kevin Durant, if you're familiar with Kevin Durant's body shape. Tall, lanky, a really good shooter. He's been compared to Tracy McGrady too. What's interesting, though, is so he's a sophomore and he won the National High School Player of the Year. And as you said, LeBron hasn't even done that. Nobody's done that. I mean, it's never happened in the history of high school basketball. A sophomore
I can't
wins
even
this
remember
award.
sophomores being on my varsity team in high school.
Exactly. And, LeBron won his junior and his senior year. But for Bates to win his sophomore year, it's going to be interesting because I remember LeBron's really the only basketball player I can think of that was so heralded out of high school that he was on the cover of Sports Illustrated in high school. They were airing games on ESPN when LeBron was in high school. Obviously, this is his junior and senior year. You imagine that now that Bates has this attention on him and has this award, he's going to be under the microscope to a degree he's never experienced. So I'm going to be curious to see how he adapts to – it's not easy being LeBron, to have a camera in your face from 17 years old on and never have privacy is not an easy thing. And LeBron's handled it very well. He's been adept at managing his career. And it'll be an interesting thing to see if Bates can do it.
Garnett was in front of people knew about him before.
Yeah, and Kobe. There were some guys who came out of high school heralded, Tracy McGrady too. So Bates will be in that caliber. I think what's going to be interesting is the one and done rule, which is currently
stupid.
It's dumb, but it exists. So basically you can't go from high school to the pros right now. You have to play at least 1 year of college. And in 2022, there's going to be a new collective bargaining agreement, and most people anticipate this rule will be done with. And
it should be.
And that's going to be the perfect age where Bates could be the first kid to go from high school to the pros again. So it'll be interesting to see how he adapts from going straight in there. I think that between him and Zion Williamson, who's in the pros and is a rookie this year, I think those are the two guys. If I just had to kind of forecast into the future right now, it's obviously hard putting this on a 16-year-old kid, but I think he's positioned to be the face of the league along with Zion Williamson. Zion's got the name, the drawing power, the size. You look at Zion and even his name, Zion. Yeah. That's just a name you don't hear very often. It's same with Amani. People might just, LeBron wasn't a name people were familiar with, and then it just became synonymous with, him. And I think Amani and Zion, it's going to be an interesting thing. And those two, I think, will be the face of the NBA going forward. So I'm putting my money on the kid. I think he's gonna exceed expectations.
I won't disagree, but I think it's gonna have to do a lot with where he goes and what kind of trainer he has.
Yeah.
I know they say that Michael Jordan, we just talked about him, had a lot. His trainer had a lot to do with how he progressed.
What's interesting is about the Jordan documentary. I was thinking about this morning. If he could have went straight to the pros, if he had made that decision, I don't think he becomes Michael Jordan, the greatest of all time. In watching the footage, he went to North Carolina. He was coached by Dean Smith, one of the best college coaches that's ever lived. He played with James Worthy. I think that what Jordan went through at North Carolina allowed him to come into the league at 21 and be dominant from the get-go. And I don't know if that would have existed. So it will be interesting to see if Bates can go directly from high school to the pros, if that's what he does.
Yeah.
And also, in this day and age, it's all about your entourage too. You have to have the right people around you, the right agent, the right support structure. That's another thing I look at LeBron. LeBron's always had a strong group around him. He's never allowed people to kind of leech off of him and things to that degree. So I hope for Amani that he has the support structure around him, the family, the friends that help lift him up and allow him to just do what he does best, and that's play basketball and obviously build a brand for himself, because he needs to look at LeBron. And that's the other nice thing, is that a guy like LeBron, Jordan wasn't the best mentor. As much as we all love Michael Jordan, he wasn't there to make everyone else better. He was there to win championships. That's all he really cared about. And, there's something to be said about that. LeBron's interesting because LeBron's the face of the NBA, but he's also very nurturing to these young guys, LeBron has more of a jovial, happy-go-lucky nature outside of the basketball court, and he's not afraid to train with these guys in the summer. He's friends with the likes of Chris Paul and Carmelo and Wade and all these guys.
Yeah.
And he's been very supportive of the youngsters. So you hope a guy like LeBron reaches out to Amani and gives him some guidance for, what challenges he's going to face going from high school to the pros. So
Yeah, as much as I disagree with the one and done rule, there's a lot of kids that should go to college.
yes.
And to have that 1 year in place, I really don't like that, because you need to get through that year and you need to progress from. We've all been through it. We all played high school sports. I'm not going to say I played college, because I did not. But your freshman year, you got razzed by everybody older than you, and you took it because you're the incoming freshman. So to translate to taking that from a high school game where you're, putting down, 30 points like this kid looks like he does. You need to be humble for a year or two. And I'm going to say a year. You need to get through that freshman year where you can be that next year. You could be the one that helps out that younger kid. I think there's a lot to be said about getting through the first or second year through college and progressing and having that little bit of mindset of working through, getting through it. Whereas if you're coming straight from high school, where let's say you had 250 kids in your class, that means 125 girls are fawning over you because you're this greatest athlete. Maybe not 125, but you know what I'm saying. You're this greatest athlete, so you got this huge head, and then to go straight into the NBA, I don't think that everybody can handle it. So I think you're right. I think he needs the right entourage around him, and I think they need to be humbling him now, and which is kind of hard to say because there's some certain in your entourage you can't have around you right now, but you might have those friends, and some of those friends are helpful to getting you through.
Yeah, I think we're certainly rooting for him, and hopefully his chances are high that he's going to go right into the pros and make a name for himself. Yeah. Okay, Dan, St. Louis Blues prospect Scott Perunovich. He's a junior defenseman from Minnesota Duluth. He was in the news last week. He won the Hobey Baker Award, which is given to the best men's college ice hockey player. My question to you is, do you think we can expect to see him playing at the NHL level, and what kind of future do you see for him as a St. Louis Blue?
Well, I have seen him. I have seen clips on this kid, and he's pretty dang good. I've said it before that the college level of hockey isn't up to the pro level, of course, but it's a high level of game, and so I think he'd be smart to finish out, which especially in this year with the shortened, everybody. I'm sorry, I'm looking for the eligibility. I think, I hate to say it, but unless you're ready for the pros and you're a pro athlete right now, I think all the rest of these seniors should take advantage of this extra year that they are given.
Yeah.
And do something with it. I know it's going to be inflated rosters all across the board, but that's going to give a lot of freshmen incentives to actually work harder to make that roster. And so I think him going back for his senior year is going to be big development for him. I would see him. I would say maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years down the road. Breaking into the lineup, getting soft minutes at first, and then I see him being a regular in 3-4 years.
Do you see him being the natural replacement long term for Pietrangelo, who's sort of the defensive anchor? Again, I'm kind of pleading ignorance. I don't know a ton about this kid. He's escaped my radar, and I don't even remember him getting drafted. And then last week when I saw him win the Hobey Baker, I looked him up and I realized he was a Blues prospect.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, that's cool, but I had never heard of him. So now he's got a new spotlight on him.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I noticed that this kid from Minnesota Duluth won the Hobey Baker, yeah. So I looked at it. I was like, oh, he's a Blues prospect. So I looked into him just a little bit more, and I think it's hard to say right now what somebody can do 3-4 years down the road. because we've all seen the dips and the explosions that have happened where, 1 year, kid's sitting on 5 points for the whole year, and then the next year he just explodes, or vice versa. So I would say 2 years, maybe 3, to get him within our system, and then 3 or 4 years before we see him as a regular.
Yeah, I think it's positioned well given the defensive group that we have and the fact that you hope Petrangelo's here a few more years.
Yeah.
We'll know a lot more next summer. I think he's in a position to come into a really good team already, and he's not going to have to be the guy from day one. That will probably help him. I think of a guy like Rasmus Dahlin over in Buffalo. From day one, he was basically their best defenseman and had to play the big minutes and play against the top forwards, and that's a lot on a kid like that. And I think Perunovic has the opportunity to come in, and you've got hopefully Pietrangelo and Parayko and Dunn and all these guys ahead of him that can log those big minutes, and he can kind of ease his way in. And then
I see him equaling out more to a Shattenduce, Shattenkirk kind of the, where he could play first line, he could play second line. You're going to give him some minutes. I don't necessarily see him sticking around as a Blue. I think with him being a Hobie Baker Award winner, that he might be a trade bait.
Yeah.
So, we'll see. I always want to give props to these kids that they work so hard, and depending on what Pietrangelo does with the signing we just made.
That's another question I want to ask you. Do you think so? What were the two? There was 2 signings this week. McEachern got a deal, and what's the new defenseman that we just picked up? Scandella. So both Scandella and McEachern got deals over the last week.
Yeah.
Do you think these are indications that Petrangelo's gone? Do you think it's indications that they're gonna
somebody big is gonna be gone?
Yeah,
is my inclination. I don't know who. I couldn't throw a name out there, and it's going to have a lot to do with Seattle and who Seattle takes. I think, I don't know. I mean, I would love to see Pietrangelo just finish out his career, but we've said that so many times. And you look at all these NHL Hall of Famers, very how many of them did stick out their whole career with, there's very few. So.
What would you put the chances just right now, if I'm just kind of chances Alex Pietrangelo is a Blue long term?
I'm going to go with 70%.
Okay. I like those odds. I did see Jeremy Rutherford yesterday posted on Twitter that he had a really good article that he wrote for The Athletic that said he thinks the Blues can keep Pietrangelo, but they're going to have to make one of 2 very difficult decisions. The first one is trade Jake Allen. That's certainly a possibility because you got Binnington already sort of situated as the number 1. The other one is you could cut Alex Steen and essentially get his contract off the books. You could buy him out.
Yeah.
If those are the 2 options on the board, I would prefer they buy out Steen given his age and the money he makes. But I also, if the choice is Jake Allen or Alex Pietrangelo, it's a very easy choice for me, and it's Alex Pietrangelo. Yeah. I don't want to see Jake Allen go because I think he's the best backup in hockey. But if those are your 2 options, Steen, Jake Allen, you got to make one of them.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it right on the head there. He's the best backup in the league where he should not be a backup.
Yeah, you want to assume Jake Allen's going to get an opportunity.
There's at least 10 teams out there that would use him as their number 1, I would think.
For sure, and that would increase the likelihood that we get a good return for him because he's got value to him.
Yeah.
All right, Dan, what's the next headline you got for me?
Well, I see that news came out last week in regards to the Premier League and that their plans to resume play. Let's see here. They met, the 20 teams met on Friday, and they're looking to resume in June. Andrew, is that correct?
That is correct.
And do you really think they'll be playing in June? And what do you think about what the stands are going to look like and what the everything else around this? You are our master EPL guy, so what do you think?
This news makes me so happy. There's been so much uncertainty in sports. The NBA isn't really making they're not really giving any dates. I heard Adam Silver say yesterday or the day before that all options are on the table. That's all they'll really say. NHL, I heard Wayne Gretzky yesterday said the NHL hopefully be back in the summer. I don't know what Wayne Gretzky insight is. You probably know something, but you're getting very vague information from all of the North American sports. And what I've been appreciative of is the Premier League over in England. The clubs all meet, every week, every second week. And they have like a conference call and they all talk about different scenarios and things like that. Nothing definitive came out of last Friday's call other than they're anticipating a June return. I heard June 6th was a date before the call, that was kind of a rumored date that still could be on the table. I also, because I'm a Liverpool supporter, I follow the beat writers in that city.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of insight, dealing with the locker room. I've heard that a couple of the players have been told be prepared for training come May. So there's a possibility that the team will somehow be back in training in May. They're probably going to have to basically quarantine them together or have them up in a hotel for the time being. And the other piece of information was the Premier League thinks they can get the rest of the season done in 5 weeks. So basically every team has between 9 or 10 games left in the season. So
okay. So you double up the wings.
Play twice a week, not a problem. They do that during the Christmas period in December. Sometimes they play something crazy like 3 times in a week. Well, so there's a precedent for it.
And everything else they're talking about just running the league, right? Everything else is going to be the cups.
Well, I think they still finished the FA Cup. I haven't seen anything definitive. They're far enough in the FA Cup. I think they're not under the semifinals. There's only a couple of FA Cup games left. The League Cup's already done. UEFA is still trying to get the Champions League going, which I think is a good thing. I'm encouraged by that. I just want to see all the leagues finish. I think that's the priority. There's definitely some selfishness in there. I want to see Liverpool win their first trophy, their first league championship in 30 years. But beyond that, I just want to see all the teams get a shot. Leicester City, third in the table right now. So I'd like to see them make the Champions League. That'd be really cool. They're punching above their weight. Sheffield United, Wolverhampton, all these clubs that are having the best season maybe ever in their club's history, they all deserve the chance to see that through. It'd be such a horrible thing to undercut all of that right now and just say, we're voiding the league, we're canceling the season, we're not, that's. Well, I don't want any of that.
I think a little bit is they're listening. They have one voice to listen to. They have one. I'm not gonna. Because we have the same. We have one government, but it seems like England is, they're taking control of everything in England.
Yeah. And
all around Europe, everybody's taking control. Whereas, I hate to say it, but Orange Face is letting all these governors here in the States, kind of figure out what we all need to do. And nothing was clear about who had this power. So, we're kind of weeks behind because. So you got to give props to for them for taking care of all that kind of situation, so they can move to opening up a league. Where as in America, I think we're a lot farther away.
Yeah, there's a different element too over there where a lot of those stadiums, they're soccer specific stadiums. I think I've talked about this in the past. There's think about the Blues here locally. If the Blues want to get back playing, the Enterprise Center already has a bunch of things booked the remainder of the year, and obviously all the concerts and all that stuff, everything's in limbo right now.
Yeah.
But there's so much of an element of having to rebook events in these multi-purpose stadiums, whereas over in England, all these soccer stadiums, all they do is play soccer. So it's a little easier to schedule things. And I think there's also going to be a component that they're probably going to do something like they do in the Olympics, where they basically take these teams and put them together for a month or these 5 weeks they're talking about. So you're not going to see your family for 5 weeks. You're just going to be sort of isolated to yourself to limit, the spread of anything if there's still stuff going on.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. So they're basically just going to be held up. I even saw a story yesterday that the players would potentially have to come in their jerseys to practice and things like that to limit the exposure to, the people that clean the kits and things like that. So you go to training in your kit and you leave in your kit, and there's just less. I appreciate that they're trying to take all the precautions to make it safe and still finish.
Wait, they clean these kits?
Yeah.
I've never, half the time you never see these kids, or these, not kids, I'm sorry. they're off the field giving their jerseys to each other.
That's true.
Or giving it to the fans, you know.
I think it's more on the training side.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm encouraged. I need something live, and I'm dying for some Premier League action again. Okay, Dan, next big headline for you. I don't know if you watched the WNBA draft last Friday evening. If not, Sabrina Ionescu was taken first overall to the New York Liberty. So Sabrina Ionescu was the top collegiate women's player. She played at Oregon last year. She was actually the top collegiate player, men or female. Do you anticipate, given that she went to the New York Liberty, is she going to be able to elevate the WNBA's status now that she's playing in the top market in the country?
You know, with the WNBA, it's one of those where you always want this to expand and to get better coverage and all this kind of stuff. And right now might be the time where everybody is itching to watch anything and everything sports-wise on the televisions, you know, or replays or whatever, this kind of stuff. So I think this is a good thing. I would love to see, you know, and I would love to see more television coverage. You know, I think that that's what it all just kind of drums down to, is they need more coverage of these games. And I hate this, you know, the NBA and the WNBA are two separate entities, but it's time where the NBA starts promoting the WNBA a little bit more. I would like to see more clips, especially, you know, this is the New York Liberty, the New York Knicks, between their timeouts and all that stuff. They should be promoting the Liberty, and all the rest of these teams that have, you know, dual teams out there, they should be promoting the women's team. And because in the long run, you know, these women are always promoting the men's teams.
Yeah, for sure.
So, you know, you'd like to see more of it go back that way, where, you know, I've been watching more female sports lately, because you have to figure out what to watch. And, you know, I just stumbled across. I told you I've been watching disc golf.
Yeah.
Well, I just found the women's side.
Oh.
Well, it's a lot more fun to watch these women throw disc than it is a guy who, you know, who's out of shape and whatnot. So I'm getting more interested in the women's sports, and I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, I admit I was watching the WNBA draft on Friday night. I didn't have much going on Friday evening, and I thought, let me give it a shot, you know. And number one, this was the first virtual draft because of the circumstances right now. And it's interesting because next Thursday, or this upcoming Thursday, is the NFL draft. And they're going to have to do theirs virtually. And so I think the NFL kind of looked at what the WNBA did to see if they did things well or not. And I will definitely say the WNBA hit a home run with the virtual draft. It was phenomenal. The commissioner of the WNBA deserves a ton of credit. She did a great job. I think the nice thing about watching the virtual draft is it made me realize how much pomp and circumstance goes into all of these drafts. That's just overboard, especially the NFL. They don't need 3 or 4 days to do 7 rounds of a draft. That's too much for me. I know there's people that love watching the draft and they'll get absorbed by it. But it was kind of nice to see it stripped down a little bit. And the commissioner read the pick. They went to the person who got picked. They did a quick little interview. They went back to the studio. There were a couple of people in the studio that went through some highlights of the players. So it was really interesting to see that. I don't watch a ton of college female basketball or WNBA. I just, no offense to them. I actually enjoy their product quite a bit. I don't have a lot of time to get to it. I will definitely say Sabrina Ionescu is a name I know, and I made a point to watch her last year. She's got a connection to Kobe, and that was kind of part of what was interesting in January when Kobe passed. Was she was very in the news because she was lighting the league, lighting Oregon up. So I think I want to say she was kind of mentored by Kobe to a degree, and she's a triple-double threat. If you're not familiar with Sabrina Ionescu, you should watch her. She can put up 20, 10, and 10 every given game. I think she's the only woman to ever have like 2,000 points, 1,000 rebounds, 1,000 assists in a college career. It was a really fascinating number. I think she's the best female basketball player to enter the WNBA since Diana Taurasi.
Oh, wow.
Most people are familiar with Diana Taurasi
Yeah.
as a name. I think Ionescu is probably a bigger name, and going to New York is a huge deal. Her jersey already sold out on Friday evening, so as soon as she gets picked by the Knicks, the jerseys are not the Knicks, the Liberty, the jersey gets sold out. And at this moment in time, if you think about it, New York doesn't have a ton of great sports. The Knicks are down. The Giants aren't that interesting. The Yankees are always going to be the Yankees. The Rangers aren't that good. There's not a ton of unbelievable New York sports right now.
Rangers will be good here.
They will be, but I think Sabrina Ionescu could be the face of sports in New York. That's a real possibility.
That'd be a nice change.
It'd be a very welcome change. I think she's unbelievably talented. I think she's going to elevate the WNBA. I'm looking forward to it. And I also think Sue Bird, who's a previous WNBA player, she was on the virtual draft on Friday, and she was a big part of the new collective bargaining that the WNBA has. And she said that the new revenue sharing that's in place for the league and the cap was increased. She said all of these women who got drafted on Friday are going to be the first women to reap the rewards of the new structure that the WNBA put in. So Sabrina Ionescu could be the first real, well-paid superstar of the WNBA. And I'm going to put my money on Sabrina Ionescu elevates the WNBA to a new degree. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to probably watch a lot more WNBA games for the next few years with her playing.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, another word around that I've heard is that Jalen Green, a consensus 2020 college basketball recruit, has announced that he's skipping school and will go into the development G League. Is this a precedent that he's setting, and is this the end of the one and done rule? I mean, what are your thoughts? I didn't think they could do this.
So
I thought that was a part of the problem.
I don't know a ton about Jalen Green. I don't watch a lot of high school basketball.
Yeah.
But I did see this story come through last week. It was Thursday or Friday. So what he's essentially doing is he's skipping college for a year, and he's going to the G League, which is the NBA's developmental league. And he's going to play 1 year in the G League in place of his 1 year of college or whatever, and then he's going into the draft. So he's still going to have to go through the draft process.
Okay.
He's just circumventing the college system by going into the G League. And when he goes into the G League, he gets to make $500,000. So it's a way for him to get paid this first year. He's going to develop on a different degree. What's interesting is the G League is professional athletes. So the G League is essentially the minor leagues for the NBA.
Yeah.
So he's going to be going against he's going to be going against bigger competition that he'd play against in college.
A lot of juniors and who went through their junior and senior year of college. So
it's a bold move by Jalen Green. He's sort of betting on himself because he's confident enough in his ability that he thinks he's going to be able to shine in the G League, which might not be the easiest thing. I don't know. For me, the jury's out. I don't know if he's going to set off a trend of a bunch of guys doing it up until 2022 when the new structure's in place maybe. I think he's going to be kind of a rarity, kind of like sort of like LaMelo Ball, one of the Ball brothers. He didn't go to college, and he went over and played in Europe somewhere, and then he sort of bounced around to try to avoid going to college. And he's still going to end up as a lottery pick when the next draft comes around. But you didn't see a bunch of guys all of a sudden start going playing over in Europe and things like that. So I don't see Jalen Green setting in motion a bunch of guys going and playing in the G League. I think it's going to be a unique experiment. I don't know. I'm worried for him. I think it's very tough to take essentially 2 steps above what he's used to and try to stand out. I don't know. I don't know.
What kind of support do they have in the G League? Do they take these kids and mold them into, what they need to be? Because as a top 3 recruit, you would think that he's going to make a lot of money, and coming straight out of high school, I'm thinking that a lot of money is not always a good thing for these kids.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I also think there's an element of coaching to it that I'm sure the G League coaches are just fine, but you don't have the control over a guy in the G League as you do in college. In college, he's still got to go to class, and he's got a certain schedule he's got to follow. He's got more of a structure to it. If he's a top 3 consensus guy, he's probably going to Duke, North Carolina, Kentucky. So he's going to play under Mike Krzyzewski or John Calipari or one of these legendary coaches. Maybe he ends up in Michigan State with Tom Izzo, one of these guys that is really experienced and has a track record of bringing guys to the pros. And it's very easy to sort of fall in line in those spots and just learn through experience. And I'm worried for Jalen Green that he's not going to have that structure in place. He's not going to have a curfew necessarily, probably, or whatever. And it's going to be a whole different world. And I'm going to be interested to see how it goes, but I don't like his chances of developing to the degree that he probably would have in college. So I'm not necessarily in love with the idea of him going to the G League. I think it's a really, like I said, it's a really bold decision by him, and he's supremely confident in his abilities if he's going to make this decision. And I don't want to slander somebody for doing this. It's his decision, and I wish him the best of luck. I don't know what kind of financial situation he and his family are in. Maybe he needs this money. Really, maybe it's very important to him, this $500,000. I don't know, and I'm not going to presume to know. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt, and I hope for the best. I'm just nervous for him. I think it's a really tough ask. So
yeah, like you said, he's betting on himself.
Yep. So that will do it for the headlines this week. We'll come back next week. I'm sure we'll have some more headlines. Now that sports are starting to get closer to potentially happening, we're starting to get some stories come out, which is nice. So hopefully we'll have some more headlines for you. Before we go over to our listener mailbag, we're going to take a quick break. So here's a message from Office Essentials. Hey everyone, Andrew from the STL Break. I just wanted to remind you that Office Essentials sells everything you need for your HP printers. As a gold certified partner, we have qualified specialists able to direct you to the perfect fit for any office environment. By the way, did you know we also sell copiers? We sure do.
Every morning, the smell of the break room could either lead you in or push you away. Office Essentials has a great coffee variety featuring St. Louis's own Caldies to make sure everyone at your office is caffeinated up and ready to take on the day.
Okay, we're back, and we're going to jump into our next segment, which is something we've done the last few weeks. We've gotten a ton of great questions from listeners, so if you're one of those listeners, thank you. If you want, send us any and all questions. We'll be happy to take them. It can be about any sport. It can be about something in pop culture. It can be about whatever. We just want some fun stuff to entertain you. Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to jump into a few of them. Dan?
I've got one here ready for you.
What's the first one you got for me?
Who is your Mount Rushmore of sports coaches / managers?
Great question. Great question. I'm already getting angry thinking about it because there's a few names that come to mind, obviously. Most of the greatest coaches in the sports that I think about they all coached against the teams I love. So as I build this list, it's not gonna make me very happy. First name that comes to mind, we've been talking about him on this podcast actually, Phil Jackson. For me, in terms of basketball, pro level, he's the guy. He's got 11 championships. You could maybe argue Red Auerbach, coach of the Celtics in the 50s and 60s. But for me, it's Phil Jackson. He had to manage Jordan, Kobe, Shaq, a lot of egos. So he's on the list. Second one, Scotty Bowman.
Ooh,
when I think about a hockey coach, I think about Scotty. And for many years up until last year, I always thought the Blues were cursed by Scotty Bowman. He famously coached the Blues in their inaugural couple of seasons when they were an expansion team.
Yeah.
And then he left, and then he went on to win an insane amount of cups in Montreal and then in Detroit. Detroit hurt the most. But Scotty Bowman, Sir Alex Ferguson, I'm talking about soccer.
Okay.
He coached Manchester United through the 90s and won more trophies than any other soccer man. I mean, when you talk about a soccer manager, Sir Alex is the guy that comes up. Again, he broke my heart time and time again as a Liverpool supporter. We hate Manchester United, but I always respected Sir Alex Ferguson for what he did. So I've got Scotty Bowman, Phil Jackson, Sir Alex, and then my number 4 guy is Bill Belichick. I don't necessarily like Bill Belichick, the person. I think he's got a pretty scandalous reputation at times.
Yeah.
But you can't argue with results and the amount of Super Bowls he's been to, the amount of Super Bowls he's won. The fact that team turns over almost yearly and it's cyclical and it doesn't matter what bodies are in there, he's always getting that team to produce. He's obviously got his biggest test ahead next season without Tom Brady finally.
Yeah.
But for me, I think Bill Belichick has to be. So I've got Scotty Bowman, Phil Jackson, Sir Alex, and Bill Belichick. What about you, Dan?
Well, I've got Belichick and Jackson, just as you, and same reasons. Jackson for who he had who he had on his rosters and what he did with those, and Yeah, he had skill, but you also have to deal with that skill. Belichick, same kind of things. It's hard not to give him credit when he did the things he's done. One, I'm going out of the NHL world, is Herbie Brooks. A big fan of Miracle. So, that kind of has a lot to do with it, but he was so well respected around the league that it's kind of hard, not to, Scotty Bowman's a good one. But I had to go with Herbie Brooks. And my last pick is Sentimental. And I've mentioned him before. And I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. The White Rat.
Yep.
White Ears.
I knew you were going there.
To me, Whitey was the perfect manager as a fan because his sound bites were right to the point. When he was talking about his team, you knew he was talking about his team. You knew if it was positive or negative. But yet everything was positively flowing out of his mouth. But at the same time, these positives were still ripping on his team if he had to. So I'm gonna have to go with my old Sentimental Whitey.
Okay, so we both have Bill Belichick and Phil Jackson. I've got Scotty Bowman and Sir Alex Ferguson, and then you've got Herb Brooks and Whitey Herzog. I like that. A couple of honorable mentions, too, while I'm thinking about it. John Wooden and Dean Smith in college basketball. They coach UCLA and North Carolina. And Krzyzewski. What about Vince Lombardi? He's got a trophy named after him. I know he only won a couple of Super Bowls, but obviously predating the Super Bowl era, Vince Lombardi won a ton of championships with the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
So he's got to be in the conversation, too. All right, Dan. My question for you, this is kind of a divisive question. I'm going to be interested to hear what you say. So this person asked us, should teams with questionable names, for example, the Washington Redskins, be forced to change those names? Do you think a team like the Washington Redskins should be forced to change? People deem that name offensive.
You're talking about the Redskins. You're talking about the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, maybe the Florida Seminoles.
The Seminoles. You're talking about the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think these teams should change their names. It's hard pressed to show that these are, they're not. I guess I'm wrong in thinking that these don't degrade anything. It's the Blackhawk was a type of Indian. Mm-hmm. A Redskin was a type of Indian. If I am wrong, please comment and let me know. I'm trying to be as, I don't want to act like I'm, racially, correct or incorrect or whatever you want to say. But, in my mind, I don't see the big problem. And again, there are people out there who might be listening that might have a problem with this. Please explain this to me, because I would love to. I love to hear both sides, because I change my mind all the time, and within weeks sometimes I've changed my minds. But it's hard to do that with these teams when they're so ingrained in our head, in our world for so long. You take out the Redskins, or you're gonna have to take out the Pirates, or you're gonna have to take out, some of these other teams that that it means something that we don't know what it means, or this kind of thing. So that's my take on it. I'd love to hear your take, actually.
I think it's a slippery slope. Yeah. If you start taking one, you got to take them all. I kind of fall in the proverbial PC culture you side, if you want to use that term. I would probably lean towards just saying if enough, again, you got to define what enough is, whatever. If there's that much, if there's that many people upset by certain terms like Redskin, I think Redskin could be definitely conveyed as a negative term,
Yes.
I think maybe even beyond the name, it's the logos that are very offensive looking, and also the way we as fans act in the crowd. I'm thinking, you mentioned the Atlanta Braves, the chop they do it in Kansas City with the Chiefs too.
Yeah.
The hand gesture, the chop. I think to a Native American person that comes off as very offensive, and I think you have to sympathize with that group of people, the Native American people. I think their opinion matters a lot, and so I'm ultimately okay with blanket changing them all if you have to. I know that it's one extreme or the other, kind of. You can't just pick and choose. You can't just say, oh, well, Redskins offensive, but Blackhawk isn't, or whatever,
Yeah, I mean, there's so many college teams that have the same kind of mascots or that kind of thing. So
yeah, like when I think of the Florida Seminoles, a guy dressed up as an Indian comes out on a horse and like throws down a spear in the 50-yard line. Again, that probably comes off as very offensive to the Native American population, and those opinions I think should matter. Yeah, I'd rather them get rid of all of them if the choice is one or the other. Just this is sports. It's here to bring people together. If people are really turned off by a name, we should adapt.
Exactly, and
that's my take.
The hard part that I see though is that it's a culture. On my side, the hard part for me to see is that it's a culture that I don't know enough about.
Yeah.
And what we were taught growing up is, lack of a better term, BS to some extent, because it was always swayed to make it look better. So I don't, it's hard for me to be a white Caucasian giving a good response on this, and to this kind of effect, if at the same time, if there's white Caucasians on either side of this, I don't think their voices should be weighted nearly as heavy as the Indian culture.
Yeah, I wish we're talking about the Redskins specifically, so I'll just stick with them. I wish their owner Daniel Snyder, I don't know if he has, but I would hope that he has brought in some actual Native American people from different tribes in the country still, and had a real discussion about why they find that term offensive, why is it deeply rooted as an offensive term, really listen to their voice, and like you said, defer. Daniel Snyder has no right to, that name probably doesn't offend him at all, but he should definitely not just disregard people's opinions who are offended by it, and you should validate if it's offensive, find out why, understand it, and really put some thought to it.
Yes.
And I think, even though I'm probably on the extreme side and saying, if you're going to change one, just change them all. I don't have a problem with it. I can learn to call them a different name. I had to do that with the Hornets changing to the Pelicans.
Yeah.
We all mocked the Pelicans for being a silly name, but eventually they're you just learn they're the Pelicans, whatever. So yeah, if the Washington football team became a different name other than the Redskins, you'd have a group of people that were very upset by it. Because, how dare you change the name? But eventually we'd all learn to call them a different name, and it wouldn't bother me at all. So, yeah, I'm on that side. This is a very controversial topic.
Yeah,
we'll put up a poll on this because I want to hear from everyone, because I think everyone's opinion does matter on something like this. It's a very important.
And I'm going to throw that out there one more time. I apologize if my feelings are wrong. Please let me know, because this is something that I would like to change too. If I'm totally stepping on toes that I shouldn't be, let me know. Let us know, and I'll probably change my thought.
Yeah, that was a great question. I appreciate. Yeah. We're not afraid to answer the tough questions.
No,
right?
not at all.
What do you got for me, Dan?
All right, let me do this. I forgot it was my turn. Oh, here we go. Which sport has the worst referees / umpires / whatever you want to call them?
They're all terrible.
Yeah.
They're all terrible.
Stripes, blue.
My gut reaction is hockey, NHL. I think NHL refs are really bad, but I don't think it's totally their fault. And what I mean by that is the rules are they're open to interpretation, and the game moves at such a rapid pace that, whether it's like charging or interference, a lot of those calls aren't easily defined.
Yeah.
And so there's I think being a ref in any sport is not a glorious, glamorous job. So I will sympathize with the referees. It's not a job you want because you're only really called out when you're not doing well. Refs rarely get praised. For instance, we're not talking about which has the best referees. We're talking about the worst referees. So I don't think the job of an NHL referee or any of them is easy, but I think the NHL referees are very inconsistent, which is a problem. I think the NFL referees are also in the conversation because they've had a lot of high-profile incidents, but it's really beyond refereeing in the NFL. It's the replay is an issue.
Ugh.
There's just a lot of stuff wrong with NFL referees. I also think that Premier League referees are a problem, mainly because we know them by name. If you watch soccer or watch the Premier League, Martin Atkinson, Mike Dean, in the past Howard Webb. There's a lot of Premier League referees. You know them by name. England's such a small country. You know where these guys grew up. You know where their biases probably are. So there's a lot of You don't often hear that with like an NHL referee. You're not like, oh, that NHL referee is from Chicago. Oh my God, I can't believe he's refereeing a Blues game or whatever.
Yeah.
Every time I see a Liverpool Manchester United game, I'm like, please don't put Martin Atkinson in it because I know he's from the greater Manchester area. Even if he doesn't have a bias, we believe he has a bias because he's born in a certain area. So I think there's a problem with that. Push comes to shove, I'm going to say NHL referees. That's my answer.
Okay, I can see that. I'm going to. Your argument is that the NHL and the NFL have to boggle through their stupid rules that are just craziness. So that makes me want to go to a little bit of the other side of the extreme where the rules are pretty much have been set in stone for years and years, and that's MLB.
Oh, yeah. You talking specifically umpires or just them as a collective?
The umpires within the MLB, I just think are worst in the fact that they insert themselves into the game too often. I'm not going to say that because first of all, I can watch a hockey game, a basketball game, a football game, and I can appreciate what all these refs and these umpires and whatever you want to call them, what they do. The problem is when I get to a MLB game and these kids are just, I call them kids. I shouldn't. They're in their 20s. But they're playing a sport they love, and any kind of comment to themselves sometimes just gets that umpire straight up, throws his helmet off, and boom, guy's gone. It's like, wait, what? Why did you interject yourself into this when you didn't need to be? If this player wants to bitch and moan that he thought the ball was a little bit wide, let him bitch and moan. Go back to your job. They're too sensitive, and they think that they are perfect. Whereas, especially the home plate umpire, which should be the last one to be able to throw these people out because their strike zone varies every night, every inning sometimes, between the inning sometimes, depending on who's pitching. They have so much bias that I think it's absolutely ridiculous. And what cracks me up is that, a big one was, I can't think of who it was. Was it Bobby Cox? Started yelling, arguing back and forth, and the guy threw him out. And the umpire threw Bobby Cox out, it might have been Lou Piniella. But he turned right around and threw the umpire out of the game. It's like, no, you get out of here. You're the one. I would love to see that. I would love to see, the time where the two managers can go to the middle of the field and talk to each other and be like, we need to get this guy out of here.
I like that twist on the game.
Because seriously, I go back to Randy Johnson's perfect game. Watch that perfect game. Watch his ninth inning. A lot of his strikes are 3 to 4 inches out of the strike zone, but he is pitching at such a high level that day that the umpires are just letting it go, and they're, and the unwritten rule of baseball is these other players on the other team are just kind of letting it go too, because it is what it is. You're seeing, a perfect game is a perfect game. So these, the unwritten rule lets them get away with some of this stuff.
I think you're onto something there, because when you're seeing already in the minor leagues, they're talking about there are robots calling balls and strikes. I think that's a clear indication that the umpires aren't doing a very good job at home plate of consistently calling. So I think you got a real point there.
Okay, again, I played until I was 14, 15 years old at baseball. But I prided myself in knowing where the strike zone was, where my strike zone was. And when I got punched out on pitches that I knew were bad, but I just got so mad. And you get so mad at nobody but the umpire. And, there's nothing you can't get mad at the pitcher, because he just pitched the ball. It's the umpire who called it a strike.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a good answer.
Yep.
I might change mine to yours. All right, Dan, next question for you. This is a good one. Definitely a subjective answer. What's the ugliest uniform in sports history?
The ugliest uniform in sports history.
Ugly uniforms. I love a good ugly uniform.
Let's see here. Pavel Bure.
You talking about the Canucks?
The Canucks.
Ooh, those are pretty hideous.
Pavel Bure wore it, and I'm blanking on. I can't.
Cliff Ronning was there.
Cliff Ronning. Why am I blanking on the Vancouver Canuck that killed us? Trevor Linden. That's who I'm thinking of.
Linden, yeah.
Killed us every year.
That's a hideous. Is it the colors that offended you? The look, all of it?
Pointlessness. It was so pointless at that time. It didn't. I guess it worked with their colors, but it was just so gaudy, outlandish that it was just horrible. So I'm going to stick with the Canucks.
Yeah, that's ugly. I'm going to stick with hockey.
Yeah.
I've mentioned this jersey numerous times. It offends me beyond offending, and it's one that a lot of people, I'm thinking of you, Sean Jeffries, like, and I don't know why you like it. It's the New York Islanders, that fisherman abomination. I don't know what that thing is. It's the creepiest logo. I think they only wore it for a year. It has nothing to do, like the Islanders had never worn that thing before. They'd never worn it since. It was this one weird year. There was this like almost wave-like image in the background, and then there's this creepy fisherman that looks like the
Gordon Fisherman guy from your.
That's exactly what he looks like. It's so weird. So I hate that. A couple honorable mentions, similar to that Vancouver Canucks. The colors on that one really bad.
Yeah,
I hated the '80s Padres.
Oh,
I'm picturing like Ozzie when he was a rookie.
Yeah,
it was like brown on tan.
Yeah, the muted colors.
It was real ugly. Yeah, that one was terrible. Tampa Bay Buccaneers in the '80s. It was sort of like a creamsicle orange.
Oh,
it was real bad. Look up the 1980s Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, before they moved. Yes. Okay, I know exactly.
It was like white on creamsicle.
Yeah, that was white and orange were their only colors.
Yes, it was terrible. And then the '94 U.S. World Cup men's kits. If you're not familiar with the '94 World Cup, look up the U.S. soccer kits that year. It was like a blue kit with white stars going down the side of it. It was so typically '90s us trying to like make a statement, like as the U.S. does, and so it was really gaudy. And, a lot of soccer kits are pretty stripped down and simple. You got like Argentina, the blue and the whites, and Brazil's yellow. It's just everything's very simple. And then you got the U.S. showing up at '94 with these horribly blue with white stripe or white stars. It was terrible. I hated those. So I got a few honorable mentions.
Yeah, it's a good one. Am I up again?
Yes, I think you got one more, Dan.
Oh, I probably threw an envelope. Oh. Here's one I'm going to like. Is Albert Pujols the best baseball player of the last 20 years?
So this question was directly brought to us by a comment you made about 3 weeks ago when you had spoken about you thought Pujols was overrated, I believe, or you had essentially said he shouldn't be considered amongst like Stan Musial. I think you'd said something similar. I love Albert Pujols. I think he's easily the best player over the last 20 years. So we're basically talking about since 2000. I don't know who else is in the conversation, really. I mean, maybe Mike Trout, maybe Miguel Cabrera. Those are the only two that come to mind. So Pujols played 11 years in St. Louis, 01 to 11. He hit over 300 all of those years but once. That year he didn't, he hit 299. He has 445 home runs in a Cardinals jersey in those 11 years. He's got 656 home runs today. He's got over 3,000 hits. He's batted over 300. He's won 3 MVPs, 2 championships. I don't know how you could – I don't know why. I'm curious why you don't rate him very highly. I think Albert Pujols is the closest the Cardinals have ever seen to Stan Musial, and I know that's almost blasphemous to a large portion, and I love Stan Musial as much as I love any sports athlete, but Albert Pujols in his prime was almost godlike at the plate especially. He was just –
yeah.
I don't know. I think Albert Pujols is hands down the best baseball player over the last 20 years.
Well, it all depends on how you're looking at this. If you're looking at, you're taking the best season by season, he's up there. But if you're taking it as, the whole last 20 years, I mean, you got to take into account that his past 8 years here has been garbage.
I'd argue the first 10 were so good it doesn't even matter what the back half did.
Well, I mean, think about his first couple years. And here's the thing is that when I'm looking at baseball players, I'm looking at both sides. You're looking at offensive and defensive. If we're strictly talking offensive, then yes, he is one of the top 5 of the past 20 years easily. I'm not going to go past that. But defensively, he's nowhere near that. He's not in the top 50 defensively in the past 20 years.
So if you just had to pull a name right now, who's last 20 years baseball, who's been the best player? Let's even just stick with, let's like rule out pitchers. Let's just stick with, outfield, players not on the pitcher's mound. Who's the best?
Well, I like Trout. I like Harper. I like the.
Just curious, how many championships does Trout have?
Well, yeah, exactly.
Or Harper?
Exactly. But, it's not always championships.
Ooh, that's a good question. I think it is always about championships.
I beg to differ because there's a lot of good players out there that just didn't have the chance. So
I don't know.
And it's because
Pujols. It's not like Pujols was just along for the ride. He was the St. Louis Cardinals for those 2 runs.
Yeah, it's personal preference to me. I don't know. It's sometimes somebody rubs you the wrong way, and to me that was Albert Pujols. Everybody loved him, and everybody bowed down to him, and was so excited that he was doing what he was doing. But I wasn't. I mean, there was times where you're just so mad at him because he's swinging away when all he has to do is drop a bunt. Or he'd
never beat out a bunt.
No, but there's times where he could have played the smarter play, and yet all he's doing is ever swinging away.
Yeah, but he hit over 300 every year.
I know,
basically.
I know.
He hit 350 one year with 50 home runs.
I know. Comment and share. Tell me why I'm wrong. I know I'm wrong.
Do you think is there any bitterness that because of the Anaheim move? I'm just asking. If let's say he had played with St. Louis, let's say he was still a Cardinal today, would that change your opinion?
It's funny because I've probably been on the record with at least my family in 2009 and 2010 saying I would have preferred him gone at that point.
Whew.
Yeah, and again, look at the teams I have. I watched the St. Louis Blues. They have 1 championship. These are my teams. I like my teams how they are and how they're built. But I don't know. I mean, it's just I thought
I'm going to have to do some research on the defensive side. I don't think he was a bad defensive player. I don't think he has any gold gloves. I can't imagine he's got a gold glove to his name, but
I don't know, but I just always thought he was a liability out there as a. I'm trying to think of a Big City. I always thought Big City was put him in at the defensive at the end of the game. Throw him in there, or throw especially when we had Berkman. I would have preferred him at first base.
I just don't think there was a more feared hitter, especially that 01 to 11. I don't think there was a more feared hitter in baseball for 10 straight years that a pitcher would, when you saw Pujols on deck, you did not want to see him step to the plate. He was, because he could hit for average power. He wasn't just pulling it. He could hit it any side, any spot on the field. He had a tremendous eye. He didn't strike out that much.
Yeah.
That's the thing. He had a really good eye at the plate, especially in modern eras where, Aaron Judge, he strikes out as much as he gets a hit these days, which is just kind of baseball today. I think if he had stuck around in St. Louis his whole career, it might change your opinion, or any of those people who fault him for his Anaheim struggles.
I think his struggles would continue.
Yeah.
I think it actually would have been worse because he wouldn't have had that DH option.
Yeah, that's a good point there.
I truly think that had he started in the American League, he never would have moved. He would have been strictly a DH had he started, because think about it, we moved him from right field, left field, third base, first base, until we finally found a spot where he could. I think he was a natural third baseman. Is that correct?
I don't even. Some of these in left field stood out for me as him.
Yeah, left field
early.
was where we had a spot for him, because we had Scotty Rowland at the time, I believe. So or Gaetti. It might have been Gary Gaetti we had at the time. But yeah, I mean, you're going to feel the full onslaught of Cardinals Nation on this question.
Bring it.
I know. Once again, as I go with the American Indian, I'm not perfect here, and I have my own opinions because they are my own opinions.
I think you would have saved yourself if you didn't throw Bryce Harper out there. I mean, I think Bryce Harper's a fine player, but he's not Albert Pujols. I mean, Bryce Harper's best year is not even Albert Pujols' top 5 year, I don't think.
I don't look at any sport within spans of years. Because again, all it takes is moving to a certain spot in a different team, and you could go from, the best hitter in the league to the worst hitter in the league. Or, the best winger, or whatever whatever sport you're playing.
You just keep talking. I got to find Albert. Here we go.
Albert Pujols, yes.
03. He hit 359, 43 home runs, 51 doubles, 212 hits, 137 runs. He could do it all.
What year was that?
That was 03.
03.
Struck out 65 times. He's never struck out 100 times in his career. That's even today. Especially in modern baseball. Usually he strikes out about 50 or 60 times. That's crazy.
I wish
I can't save you on this one, Dan. You're going to go.
I wish I knew. It's the same reason why the same reason why I love certain players. It's the same reason I hate certain players, and it's just how I am.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm gonna leave you on an island on this one.
Yeah.
Okay. Here's our last mailbag question of the week. Okay, Dan, what's the biggest rivalry in sports according to you?
It's the biggest rivalry.
Biggest rivalry in sports.
Wow.
There any that come to your mind just right away?
It's hard to look at. It's hard to look at other cities and try to think of who their biggest rival is and all that kind of stuff. So this question to me is, who is the biggest St. Louis rival? And I think right now the biggest rivalry would be Cardinals Cubs. I would have to say that would be the biggest one that I pay attention to. I know that the Red Sox Yankees has always been a huge one, but that goes back to the the Babe Ruth trade and that kind of thing. So I would.
So you're going to stick with Cardinals Cubs?
Let's stick with Cardinals Cubs. Yeah.
I think Cardinals Cubs is a perfectly interesting, intense rivalry. I think it's been pretty lopsided over the course of the rivalry. I think to me I think what defines a great rivalry is balance. I think the Cardinals have disproportionately beaten the Cubs, sort of to the degree the Red Wings, when we thought we had a rivalry with them. It wasn't real. It was very one-sided. For me, there's no doubt, team-wise, the rivalry, and I'm going to have to go outside of America, obviously. Soccer is just on a different level globally, and there's one soccer rivalry that is unparalleled. It draws more attention for a regular season game than the Super Bowl does or whatever. And I'm talking about Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Oh, okay,
they're
nice.
Without a doubt the 1 and 2 biggest global. I'm not even talking soccer. If you lined up every sports team in every league in every country in the world, Real Madrid and Barcelona are 1 and 2 always and forever.
Oh yeah.
You go to a kid on the streets in Rio de Janeiro, he knows who Real Madrid and Barcelona are. You go to a village in Kenya and you ask Real Madrid, Barcelona. Everyone knows who any corner of the world. Everyone knows who Real Madrid and Barcelona are. Those and the rivalry's balanced. It's almost 50-50 between the two. They for a long time, there was Messi and Ronaldo. They always have like the premier players. So there's an element of star power to it. There are clubs steeped in rich tradition. Everyone around the world knows of these teams. They only play twice a year in the league, so the games are just this massive magnitude. So for me, Real Madrid, Barcelona, huge. A couple honorable mentions. Obviously, for a love of me, Liverpool, Manchester United's a pretty big one. Sticking with soccer, I also think soccer has rivalries that you just don't see in American sports. There's just the way the fans react is just different. I'm speaking about Argentina. If you're not familiar, look up River Plate versus Boca Juniors. Especially if you see the way the crowds are in those games, that rivalry is on a smaller scale, ridiculously large.
Oh wow!
In terms of Argentine. In Argentina. But then I also think about this question athletically. You and I just both naturally assume teams. Think about a rivalry between people.
Oh yeah, I can see what you mean. Becker, Lindell,
Borg McEnroe, Federer, Nadal,
Connors, McEnroe.
Yes, tennis lends itself to rivalries really well. But there's one other rivalry that comes to mind. It was actually on. It was Saturday night on ESPN. They were re-airing, I think the entire Saturday evening was devoted to Muhammad Ali classic fights. And they showed them in their entirety. And they showed Ali Frazier 1, 2, and 3 back to back to back.
Oh, wow.
And Ali Frazier, for people who aren't familiar with that rivalry was really intense. Over the course of 3 fights, those guys grew to have a really strong respect for one another, but Ali talked so much trash, especially in an era when nobody was talking trash, that he got under Joe Frazier's skin so badly, and then Frazier winning the first fight really built on that rivalry, and then Ali obviously winning the second fight, and then they had the rubber match. That rivalry just kept building and building and building and building to a crescendo, and I don't think that you're going to see something like that ever again. So for me, I thought about this question in a couple of different ways, and Ali Frazier is the rivalry I always point to from like 2 athletes. I think those athletes, and the styles clashed. Yeah. They came from different backgrounds and they just had different philosophies. There was so much different about Ali and Frazier that rivalry always comes to mind.
Yeah, I guess I looked at it as a team because I did play tennis growing up. So you're all in the same locker room before your match. Yeah, so.
The tennis rivalries aren't really, there's not that much bad blood most of the time. Like Federer and Nadal don't dislike each other. They probably get along quite well, actually. Borg McEnroe? I'm a little younger than you. I didn't really get to watch them in their prime. Did they actually dislike each other?
Oh, McEnroe was just without lack of a better term, he was a prick. He was a prick. And I think Connors was a prick too. And Borg just kind of was just doing his thing. I think anything McEnroe was probably trying to get under Borg's skin. but he got under his own skin a lot easier than he got to Borg. So.
Okay, well, that will do it for our listener mailbags this week. We hope you keep sending questions in. We'll get to them next week. So, Dan, I must admit, as I was driving into work today, it was like a ghost town out there in the parking lot.
I think everybody's freaking out about this coronavirus, Andrew.
It sure feels like it. I know it's got the whole country on lockdown right about now. Don't worry, though. Dan and I are here with 4 essential tips to help talk you through the virus. Number 1, let's wash those hands, people. I always tell my son, sing the alphabet song while you're washing to get a good, thorough clean.
Andrew, I've been skipping handshakes. I know I look a little rude, but it has to be done right now.
Yeah, and third, keep a safe distance. Dan and I have 6 feet between us right now, which is recommended.
And lastly, stay home.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're going to jump into our final segment. If you've been following along the last couple of weeks, we've got a tournament going on our STL Break Twitter page. It's for the greatest sports video game ever made. There's 4 regions. You've got the 70s and 80s. You've got the 90s. You've got 2000 through 2004. And then you've got 2005 through the present. We had Sweet 16 matchups last week, and here are the results before we jump into the Elite 8. So in the 70s and 80s bracket, you had Pong narrowly beating Blades of Steel, and Mike Tyson's Punch-Out delivered the knockout blow to Golden Tee. NHL 94 and Tony Hawk had an epic war in the 90s bracket. And
epic war.
So I've got to tell the story on this one. So
yes, please.
Within the first 3 or 4 hours, Tony Hawk had all of the votes.
Yes, it was 100%.
It had 100% of the vote. And then these fanatic NHL, so there are a bunch of NHL 94 fan pages on Twitter, and they must do some incredible scouring of NHL 94 content on Twitter, because when they found this poll, they jumped on it and started retweeting and sharing, and within the space of a few hours, it went from 100% of the vote to Tony Hawk to about 80% of the vote for NHL 94.
Yeah, it went from 8 votes. What did I see? I think I saw 8 votes when I voted to like 90-something votes.
Yeah, it eclipsed 100 votes by the end of it. And NHL 94 absolutely demolished Tony Hawk. So to all those crazy NHL 94 fans out there,
boo.
Well, we want to thank you really for sharing our content.
Yeah.
Because
Actually, we did.
But you definitely took out a sentimental favor for Dan and Tony Hawk.
You know what? Good for them.
That's right.
Good for them.
They're going to be a hard group to beat going forward at this point.
That's going to be your champion. I mean,
it feels like it, unless something crazy happens. Then Super Mario Kart took out NBA Jam. As we jumped over to 2000 through 2004, pretty big upset. The 1 seed Madden 2004 went down to WWF No Mercy. Then NFL 2K5 beat Gran Turismo 3. And finally, in our 2005 through present bracket, NBA 2K11 took out Tiger Woods PGA 12. And then Wii Sports scored an upset over MLB 09 The Show. So that puts us into our Elite 8. We have eight sports video games remaining. We're going to get those polls kicking off tomorrow. That's Tuesday, April 21st. We'll also have the final 4 later in the week, and when Dan and I are back here next week, we'll be able to tee off the final matchup, which will take place next Tuesday. So be sure, if you're on Twitter, go to the STL Break page, follow us, and vote along with all of the matchups we have going on.
Yeah, surprising there's no baseball left in this, but I do watch some guy on YouTube that does play. Mostly football, but he moved over to MLB The Show, and that is so boring to watch. I mean, it's even worse than a regular baseball game.
So it's funny you mentioned that. I downloaded it for free a couple of months ago. MLB 19 The Show was free on PlayStation, and I downloaded it. I don't watch a ton of baseball. I don't really play a ton of baseball anymore, but I've been playing MLB The Show because it's an easy game to play with a newborn. Because you don't have to do that much, you only have to use one hand on the controller to swing the bat or whatever. And so I've been playing MLB The Show, and I've been really upset because if you're not familiar with the premise of this video game, you create a baseball player and you work your way through the minor league system and make the show, which is the bigs. And my guy got drafted by the Baltimore Orioles, so I'm stuck in Albatross playing for this team that loses 100 games a season, and I haven't.
Baltimore, huh?
I got drafted by Baltimore, and I'm stuck going up against the Red Sox and Yankees like every third series.
Oh, jeez.
And I have an agent, and I'm pressing him to make a trade, but I have no leverage because my guy's like 19 years old. It's his rookie year, And he's demanding a trade from this. It's a wacky game, and there's a lot of fun to it.
You need to do the opposite then. You need to act like you're totally content at Baltimore, and then as soon as that happens, boom, you're gonna be traded.
Well, my guy's on a 6-year deal, on a rookie deal, and I don't even get arbitration for like 3 years, so I'm stuck. I'm absolutely destroying statistically, but I'm on a team that loses every game because our team ERA, I looked yesterday when I was playing, was like 6.16 team ERA. So yeah, it's funny you mentioned MLB The Show. I've been playing a lot of the show with a newborn at night. So that's going to do it for this week's episode. We hope you enjoyed listening. Be sure to tell your friends if you like what you heard. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode, and we'll be back again next week.